and welcome to The Decision Makers, the show where we dig into what it takes to run in town. I am here today with Councillor Jason Nadeau. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Hi, nice to be here.
So we traditionally start out just going right back to your beginnings. Where do you come from? How did you land in Nipawin? What is your story?
I think I have an interesting story. I actually became a teacher when I was younger and went to school. Well, I should go back a little bit there. I went to school to university to be a physician, a doctor.
Okay.
And I ended up starting in science, and I got very far in it. However, I started having a few different interests. I had some interest in law, and I had some interest in medicine. But then someone said that you're really good at teaching people things. So they said you should do education and try it out. So I did, and I actually haven't looked back. I've been an educator ever since, and it's just something I was always interested in. Medicine was something that I wanted to really make a difference, but maybe I can help inspire and motivate other people, more people, and have more of an effect than what our physicians do and people in healthcare these days. So I started out there. After I moved into education. After I was in education, I got my first job, and I wasn't actually going to teach the very first year. I was planning on traveling with my wife, who I met in university, but we just applied to a few places and ended up going for a few interviews just for fun and for practice. And there was a northern Indigenous community, and we thought, it would be a neat opportunity to try. So we went up north and we taught, and we thought we'd just try it for a year. And 1 year turned into 4.
Wow. And
we really loved it. And beautiful community, beautiful people in Northern Ontario, Winniman Lake, Ontario. And it was my starting to teaching. And at first I was just an okay teacher, I would say. But I learned a lot of tricks and a lot of tools, and I grew a lot. And then I wanted to become a specialist in teaching reading, because I didn't want any students to not do well because of my inabilities. So I got specialty training in teaching students on how to read. I also got some expertise in technology, teaching using the computers at the time. It was called ICT. And then I also got a few other specialties, so that in Ontario, growing up in Thunder Bay, I wanted to be able to teach any grade. Just so I was universal and dynamic. So I got all my training in all the grades. In Ontario, you have to get specialization in each grade. And I actually, I started as a primary junior teacher. And I think that's what did me well, because my wife started as a high school teacher, and she had a different experience. And it's ironic because she's teaching primary now, and I'm usually teaching older students a little more. But teaching any age of student is really a really wonderful thing. So after those 4 years in Northern Ontario, I started thinking, how would it be teaching in another province? So I started looking to my other provinces, whether I would go to Quebec or go to Manitoba, and there was an opening in Manitoba. And again, I applied, and it was a really unique situation because I applied that night. It was probably 2 or 3 in the morning. And when I went to school, there was already a phone call for me the next morning. Saying, would you like to do an interview for you and for your wife? And so I did the interview, and I ended up taking that position, which was up in Moose Lake, Manitoba.
Okay.
So it's an hour outside of the PA. Yeah. And again, I wanted to know the difference in the curriculums. This Indigenous community isn't isolated. This one was accessible by road. Yeah. And again, I met a lot of great people, and I spent 4 years there also. So I've lived on First Nations in reserve for a total of 8 years, which was really an amazing experience.
I can imagine, yeah.
Now, here's what's interesting, how I came to Nipawin. When I first went up to the PA, so this would have been over 15 years ago, I used to do a lot of hobbies on the side, and one was fixing up old antique cars. So there was a few cars for sale, and the place was located in Nipawin, the town of Nipawin. And I didn't know Nipawin at all at the time, but I knew it could have been on the way up, going up Highway 6 if I took that way to get to the PA. Or not Highway 6, Highway 5.
Highway 5, yeah.
Sorry. I could have went Highway 6, which would have been faster, but I decided to go the longer way. So I came to Nipawin, and I looked around. And I'm stubborn, so I obviously didn't ask for directions or where this place was located. I did ask a couple people, but they didn't seem to know at the gas stations. So here I am coming through Nipwa, and I looked all over this nice little community of Nipwa, and it was interesting. I could not find these antique cars. So these antique cars, I wanted to buy, possibly buy one or two of them that were for sale here. So I ended up going up to the PA, and I taught there for 4 years, and that was Nipwa. And then when I was looking for different jobs, there was one that came up in Alonza, which I ended up taking. And I started spreading my circle out of where to live, and Nipwa was in that circle. And some really, really good people here. Real estate agents were really, really good. The town itself was so welcoming, and it was a place that you really wanted to raise your family. Yeah. So I fell in love with Nipwa, and I decided that I would settle here, even though I have to commute to wherever my workplace was. Nipwa is very strategic, and it's a location where you're in the middle of 5 school divisions. Mm-hmm. So that gives you ample jobs if you're an educator, but it's got great direction with the 2 highways crossing. It's got so many positives.
It's really the crossroads in the province, and you can pretty much get anywhere from here, really.
That's right. So I ended up settling down in Nipwa, and again, I come from a very modest background. Didn't have a lot, so I respect every dollar that I work for and work hard for. And there was actually, the houses I was looking at were already at the max of my price range, but I was staying over at the Bay Hill, and I was walking my dog around the neighborhood there, and there was a house for sale, and it was out of my price range, but I asked the real estate agent, I said, "You got to show me this house," and she said, "Sure." So I fell in love with that house, and I ended up making an offer on it and got that house. So a month goes by after moving into Nipwa, and I'm walking my dog, and I cross the highway. I live over by Ford, and cross the highway, and I'm walking my dog, and wouldn't you know it, a gentleman by the name of Jordy Vincent comes out.
Okay.
And he said, "Are you trying to steal my vehicles?" And I said, "No, but you have vehicles?" And wouldn't you believe it, it was those antique vehicles.
Of course.
I moved right across the road from where they live. So I really think that Nipwa, I was destined to be in Nipwa.
Yep.
And I've been here now, it's going to be almost 14 years, and
yeah.
It's something that I've really enjoyed. And definitely a place where I would recommend anyone to settle down and raise a family. So
that's how you got here.
That's how I got here, yeah. And
so what are you doing now? Like, you're still in education, you're...
You know, I do whatever is needed because I have that background where I'm a trained principal.
Yeah.
It's almost like a master's in Ontario. It's 2 years. It's actually more work than a master's.
Yeah.
So I've done the 2 years of training, and you have to go to the university to become a principal in Ontario. You have to do courses. You have to do lots of online stuff. And if you miss one day, you're done. You don't get it. So it's really strict, the rules. And it's really in-depth because in Ontario, it's really serious. Manitoba's looking to model off of that, that model, to move to a different governing body. Right now, that teachers and principals are together.
Right.
So I have that education where I'm a trained principal. One of very few in the area. I have a couple master's degrees.
Yeah.
I ended up finishing off my science degree when I was in university there.
I was going to ask you about that, so okay.
I have a biology degree. I specialized in environmental biology, but I was really interested in fish and insects at the time. And I actually thought about maybe starting a fish farm. I did a lot of studies on entomology, which is insects. And, you know, I have just a lot of interest. So definitely, you know, I'm always reading and learning and studying because it's lifelong. And education is that. It's lifelong. You're always learning. And I had a side hobby just on psychology. I really like to study people. Sometimes it was just going to the mall and just watching people and observing. And you start predicting things, you know? So, you know, you and your friend sitting at the mall would say, "I wonder what's going to happen between these two people." And, you know, and you try to get it right. Human behavior is something that fascinates.
That's a very useful skill to develop, I think.
Just before I moved here, before my children were born, I wanted to not take time away from them.
Yeah.
So I finished up my education, and what I ended up doing was finishing off 2 master's degrees in education. One in special education and one in administration, which is what you would do in Manitoba to work towards being a principal.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So right now I've been a resource teacher. I've taught every grade, and I've taught most high school subjects. So that vast knowledge is really powerful. And currently I've been working the last few years as student services and as a consultant in literacy and numeracy and in resource. So it's kind of like a student service model, but it's a little more. And because I work for Turtle River School Division, which is one of the smaller divisions in the province, it's really amazing. It's such a great division because it's smaller. It really, our neighbor here, Beautiful Plains, we work really well together. We're partners on quite a few things. And I had the opportunity to work with Beautiful Plains in a bunch of different initiatives that we tackle. So definitely, I'm constantly, working around with the department and with the province. Because we're so small, we're able to do things really quickly. So we're kind of like that test division. So we can implement something really, really fast in a short amount of time, whereas other divisions can take years because they're so large.
You're going out to numerous schools, numerous people. There's a lot of more red tape. There's a lot more,
So I've been very fortunate, I feel, in my life to have, a really great job, and I love what I do. I get to help support teachers, parents and families, students, and to do what's right. So even in my current job, I always have that word of reason, and I stand behind what's right. And sometimes my employer loves me, and sometimes they're not as happy because I'm always going to support what's right. But everyone needs that person to back them. So that's kind of what my motto is do what's right and be kind and make a difference.
So it sounds like you've developed quite the skill set that translates really well onto your work on council.
I agree. I think so. I think you need someone that wants to make that difference. I want to give back to the community because I feel so fortunate for the things that I have had in my life, and I want to make the world a better place. I want to have a better life by making the lives of other people better. And I think that's what it's about, is do whatever you can to help support your community.
I think you've answered my next question before I asked it, because I really wanted to ask, why did you want to run? Why did you want to serve on council?
It's interesting. I didn't know at the time that I wanted to serve on council, but again, I went and got my principal certification, and I started training to be a superintendent. In Ontario, it's got a different title, and again, that's another 2 years on top. So a lot of extra years in depending what province you're in, but just a natural leader, a take charge type of person. I had a couple people in the community approach me asking me to run. They said, we need someone that will help get things done. We need someone that is strong-minded and not afraid to have those tough conversations, and someone that will do what's right. And I guess I must be doing things right for some people to come to me and approach me and ask me. So I felt very honored, and I really didn't know what impact I could make. So I started looking into it. At first, you kind of, shrug it off. And then you start looking more and more at it, and you start thinking, wow, this is something that I really want to do. I want to help move Neepwa along. I want to help Neepwa grow, because sometimes things take so long to grow. Definitely, I was watching a lot of the council meetings on NAC TV, which is reading everything in the newspaper, following the town. I've always followed the town ever since I moved into the area. And there were certain things that I thought we could possibly, do just a little better. But I want to make sure I give homage to all the great people that were before me, all the prior mayors that did so well, DeGroot, Waddell, and many others. We've had some amazing leaders in our community to help set everything up to the point where we are now.
Exactly. They've all worked in succession to bring us to where we are, so.
One strong reason why I ran for council is and this is going to sound ironic because of our announcement that just happened, but I really thought that there's no reason why we couldn't get our own hospital in Neepwa. And when I ran, I was really adamant. Lots of people were saying, a hospital somewhere around us. And I said, no, enough of that. We need a hospital here. And you really have to set your expectations high. When you do goals and you set goals for people, if you ask for a 10 and you just get an 8, hey, that's an 8. That's a win. But if you set yourself up for a 7 or an 8 and then you get a 5, you have to really set those expectations high. So for myself, the only location was going to be Nipawin. Respecting all the other communities, we have the population and we have the services, and that's something that I've really helped promote with council is to set things up for a regional atmosphere. And that's something that all of our council has done. And while I gave praise to our prior councils, I'd like to say that the current council we have is just amazing. We have a really good chemistry. There's a science term added there. But no, definitely, we have chemistry, and we all seem to help support each other in different ways. What one person doesn't have a strength in, another one does. And we all seem to see things in a common way. And we have a lot of discussions, a lot of good talks, but it's just amazing. So we have a lot of great thinkers, and we all have different perspectives. There's people with business, people with development experience, some educators there, definitely. And we all come at it with a different angle. And not to forget, and I know I'd feel bad if I ever forgot, our town staff in our town, they're so underappreciated. They do so many things. And our town administration, they're quite amazing people also. Now, I haven't had the benefit of meeting the prior town administration, but the current ones are doing a really good job.
Oh yeah, and there's so many moving parts when you're running a town that people don't think about. They just take for granted because they exist, they work great.
Right.
And that's all town administration is running that. That's that doesn't just magically happen.
People always say that it's the town administration that makes everyone look good, right? So councillors look good because of the town admin. And what we provide, as you've heard from many other people doing these conversations, is we provide the direction, we provide the support, and we kind of start giving some of our ideas, whether they're accepted or not. And the town admin knows that I've always got lots of ideas, and that's where some of my strengths are. I'm a real strategic thinker. I'm a consultant, so I consult all the time. Sometimes it's asked, sometimes it's not. So it's always that feedback that people need to help grow and become better. And if you ask my own kids, they'll tell you he always gives feedback. That's for sure.
So have you been involved in any kind of strategic planning on the town level, like really formalized sort of strategic planning, 5, 10, 15, 20-year plans?
We've done some planning at the town level, definitely seeing what plans were already created by prior councils. But as our own council, we've planned and we've worked together to try to start setting the future of Nipawin. And we have indirect conversations about where do we want to be in 5 years or 10 years. But it's really a unique experience when you first get elected in. Your hands are kind of tied for the first year or two because the last council has already set that direction. And unless you pull the plug on it, which isn't always good because you're going to lose whatever you've invested in that time, money,
so you're completing
resources.
Those goals at
That's
that
right.
point. Yeah.
You have to kind of finish off what they were doing. When you come into council and you're just elected, it's amazing. The last council, they did some really good strategic moves and they started working on the lagoon system. But that is a couple-year process, so you have to finish that off, and it takes a lot of money, millions of dollars, as you can see. And they applied for grants, and they did it all the right way, and all that takes time, waiting for, you can't start a project until you're approved or you won't get those grants. So that's the one thing you learn when you enter council is there's a lot of red tape and there's political time that you have to kind of wait. So things move slow.
Yeah.
And one thing about me is I'm a get her done person. People usually come to me if they want things done and they want it done. So having to wait is something that I've been continuing to learn, that you have to wait the appropriate amount of time. But this administration and this council is really good to work with, so we're able to work on that. A lot of the other things we've been working on too is to just get our projects completed fully. So I'm always reassuring our administration staff that we want to finish these projects too before we keep moving on, because sometimes we have our hands in different pots.
I can imagine that can be difficult at the moment because there is so much going on. at any given time.
Oh, definitely. You know, and what's great though is our council that was elected in this term, the people of Nipwa, you know, give them a tap on the back also, because the people of Nipwa, they did a really good job at selecting people that would represent their views and what they want. So we all came to the table with a lot of common elements. We wanted to improve infrastructure, we wanted to improve healthcare, we wanted to improve recreation, and we also wanted to improve all of the services in town without increasing taxes. So
that's a tall order.
Yeah, one of the things I ran on to at the time was that I would not I would not vote to increase taxes beyond inflation. So over these last 3 years anyway, or it's going to be 4 years now, we didn't raise taxes at all. It was a zero increase for 2 years, and we wanted to help support residents that are just trying to get by, residents that,
especially right now.
With COVID.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, you can only do that for so long. Yeah. But we've been fortunate. We had the right combination of things to allow us to make that decision.
Yeah.
Again, you know, coming back to running for council, one of the things that I wanted to help represent with the recreation was I wanted to help represent young families. So one thing that I noticed looking at council is some of them didn't have young families, but Nipwa is changing in dynamics where there's more young families. So I like to represent young families, but I also represent all taxpayers. I represent those that need help, people that want to see things done right. I have no biases in town, no interests. I'm all just about making sure things are done appropriately. And one thing I can assure the residents of Nipwa is everything is being done really well, and there is no biases that I can see being done. My fellow councillors, they're really good about stepping away when there's a conflict or when something interests them. So that's something that I want to reassure residents in Nipwa, that we have a really strong team and people know those boundaries. So it's really great. So I work with an amazing team. And I always joke there that they put me next to, some, really great people. So you only get better as you're next to these great people too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it does seem like the councillors are able to really enhance each other's contributions, just with the different strengths that everyone brings. And it's interesting. I just moved this past November. And as I was going through my things, I actually came across one of your campaign, I guess they were door hangers that went around. And I remember, it reminded me of the election and what a real effort you put in to making sure that the community of Nipwa got to know you. And it seemed like you were really committed to doing a really good job. Is that sort of how you approached it? Because a lot of people don't really campaign that much, I guess, when they come onto council. They come to the debates, they talk to people, but they don't do that kind of real campaigning.
Well, thank you. Definitely, I wanted to reach every resident if I could. Obviously, that's going to be impossible because people are not always home when you come. Every year, my plan was to go to every resident's house and to let them have a say and a chance to talk with a councillor. And I even asked the other councillors, I said, we could split up the town and we all take different sections. But what happened there was different things happened. Life happens.
COVID happened.
COVID happened. What happened the first time was, you don't want to, the election's over, everyone's like, finally, no one's going to be pestering us at the door. We elect people to do their job. We don't need you to come and ask us what to do. We've already talked to you and told you. And residents did an amazing job. Some residents, I would go to their home and ask them, what can we do better in the town, just as a possible candidate. And I have notes and notes of what people wanted. And some people, they were gracious and invited me into their home. I remember one home, I was there for 2.5 hours. So I started my night, I got to the third house, and I come out and it's pitch black. And I want to respect people's time too. So after 9 o'clock, I kind of stopped campaigning. But just being able to reach everybody took a couple months. And I was able to get to most residents. And unfortunately, those that live very far or isolated, you have to kind of pick and choose. But I'd like to still engage with them and talk with them. But they gave me so much good information.
Do you still have that list?
I do. And I use it all the time. And what's interesting is the first year of council, we would have conversations around the table, lots of times out of camera because, lots of times, it's so formal. When you're in a meeting, you can't speak out of turn. There's a process, the Robert's Rules of Order. And that's one thing that you study up, because you want to make sure you know if you have to stop something, you have to know whether you can table it.
Yeah.
And that's not really the proper formal word. It's lay it on the table. So you have to learn all these little tricks, because if somebody is going to do something that you don't believe in, you have to be ready to stop it. Or at least pause it, so that people can have more discussions and more time to research and talk. And there's a lot of strategy. So I want to make sure I'm representing the citizens of Neepawa to the best of my ability. And I could tell you this, when I went around door to door, the ideas were there and all the concerns were there. So listening to residents is key. And it's part of being transparent. And the first year of council, there was a lot of questions. I wonder what residents think about this. And then Mayor McCutcheon, he knew what I did also, and he said, you know what, Jason, what did you hear from residents? So right away, I opened up my book, and so every resident that spoke with me, their input was always in play whenever a decision was made. And that's important, I think. So to have that information, we don't have to stop and go, let's go ask residents. We know what residents want.
That's just invaluable information to have, that you've had those conversations with people.
It's like the master book, and everyone knows when I take out that book, like I have it next to me.
This is the people talking now.
That's right. I have it next to me at council, and I always take notes, and there's sometimes it's after the meeting, sometimes it's during. You want to concentrate and be professional, but it's all about finding what residents want. So my goal and my plan was to go every year and talk with residents. I even kicked around, like being available once a week, maybe at a restaurant and have coffee, come for a coffee. But again, being a new councillor, you don't want to share more than you're supposed to share, because you could be in conflict and kind of get kicked out, right? And so I really wanted to be cautious, and I didn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. And there's already a number of residents from our area that do meet for coffee in the evenings. And we'll talk a little later probably about some of the different groups I'm a part of. And so I'm a busy guy also, so I'm always involved. I maximize my time in the community. But I wanted to go door to door. So my goal after 1 year was to go door to door and say, how are we doing? And please, we're always looking for that feedback. You could tell this to any councillor. They're very open, just like I am. How are we doing? What can we do better? And tell us what we need to do to make Neepawa a better place, whether it's just your ideas or something that we might be doing wrong. So the provincial election happened. So I don't want to go pester residents after there's, honestly, the timing just worked out that way. And then after that was the federal election. And then another provincial and COVID. So it's finding the right time. So my goal this past summer was to go out, but COVID just wouldn't stop. It just was not appropriate to go door to door. And, residents don't want to see people coming to their doors right now. And socially, we're changing a bit. So eventually, there's going to be another election where we'll have to go door to door. But it's something that I expected to do every year.
Right. And it just kind of didn't pan out that way, I guess.
No, sometimes things happen. So
we'll have to maybe find some other mechanisms to be able to make that individual contact with people, whether it's just through social media or something else. I know it's not the face-to-face that we like, but...
Right. Sometimes the problem with that, though, is not everybody is on social media.
Oh, absolutely not,
When I was campaigning, I started up a social media page, and I have not done it justice, because you're supposed to update it frequently.
Right.
And the problem with that is if you're engaged and working hard in the community, you just don't have time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people find that.
So I feel really bad that my page kind of went a little down, but definitely I want residents to know that it's because I've been working so hard on their behalf. And